Auburn at Alabama with big BCS implications on Friday. Marco, who do you like and why?
I like Alabama. The key to stopping Auburn is stopping Cam Newton. I think Nick Saban is the type of coach that can get a game plan together to stop one player.
It's a good point. Is the scout type guys believe that Saban and Alabama defensively, schematically, are the top defensive team in the country because of the level of coaching. And you're right, Newton does represent an uncommon factor in the game. So I love what you're saying there.
You know, and I go back, I mean, you've got recent examples. I mean, the last couple of years in the SEC, it's been Alabama and Florida. And what's Florida had? Florida was run with Tim Tebow, and, you know, he was able to hold his own against Florida in those games. So I like him here. Looking at this game offensively, defensively, we can talk all you want to talk about Auburn's offense. It's great. Their defense is just putrid. We've said it time and time again. Alabama's going to be able to go on long, sustained drives against this defense. That's one of the best ways to keep Cam Newton in check to start with, is when you've got him on the sidelines.
You know what this game reminds me of? Michigan State, Iowa, which was your game of the year, which won.
Mm-hmm.
You've got an undefeated team against a really good home team, and the undefeated team is suspect. And in that case, you were laying 6.5 with Iowa. I thought it was a little pricey.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the analogies in this game?
There's definitely all kinds of similarities there, and we're getting it just like the Iowa game. You're getting it at home with a big atmosphere, and this is you can't get any bigger than here. This is probably next to Michigan and Ohio State. Alabama and Auburn is probably one of the most famous rivalries you have.
Now, one of the recurring themes this week is how rivalry handicapping is slightly different. There's other factors to consider. How, in this case, maybe not at all. How does that affect your handicap on this game?
One of the things I told you is I always look at the dog first in a rivalry game. But in this one, it's different because the dog is the one that has everything on the line, everything to lose. They're going to the ones that, can come into this game a little bit tight because the brass ring is in their grasp. They win here. This is really their game to the national championship game because everybody, it's a foregone conclusion. Whoever they play, in the SEC championship game is going to be a step down from Alabama.
Yeah, though I do want to make a point. I know in the Boise game you're going to be talking about the way Auburn turns out earlier on Friday is going to affect your handicap on the Boise game. But let's be honest, how big of a favorite? So it is South Carolina, right?
It'll be
How big?
Carolina.
What's the line on a neutral, Auburn, South Carolina? Is it more than 4 or 5?
Depending how this game plays out, if Auburn
That's
wins
a good
convincing.
point. That's a good point. But it's less than a touchdown, right? Even with a convincing win.
I think with a convincing win, it's going to be closer to 7 because the one knock.
But even there, at 7, it's not like an easy game. I mean, 7 on a neutral.
Looking at it point spread wise, yeah, but I think the general consensus is the South Carolina defense is not a strong defense. They will have trouble containing Auburn. They do have a good passing, offense, South Carolina. They can trade points with them, but I just don't think that they can upset them.
We haven't this week talked much about the intentions of the bookmaker. That's something you talk about a lot, is what are they trying to do? I think they're trying to get Auburn action here because I can look at 9 out of 10 games and tell you at sportsbookspy.com where on the leading up to the game, but most of the betting happens the day of the game. So in the day of the game, you can go to sportsbookspy.com and you can actually see the bet percents on each team. I can predict 90% that who's going to have more bets. This is one I don't know if I know because I would think you would get 50% Auburn action if this line was -3. So to me, let me ask you this. If the line was Alabama -3, how would you project the bet percent split?
When you ask me these questions, it's because I look at it in a contrarian view. I read it. You always make fun of me. Well, let's just make the line pick, and then you'll take the team.
But I'm kind of making your point here is I think they could have split the so please just answer my question. We'll get to your point, I promise. But there's a purpose to this. If it was Alabama -3, what do you think the public action would be?
I don't think it would have been much different because the people that like Auburn, see, I already know what the bet percentages are in this game.
Well, what are they?
They're betting Auburn in the game, but the line's going up.
Okay, so that's my point. You're making my point. Is they're betting Auburn at 4.5 right now? I'm saying that you'd at least would have gotten 50% Auburn at 3 because the theory is I've got a team people's talking about as the best in the country getting points against a down Alabama team, which that's illegitimate to me. I think Vegas has them 4th in the country or 5th in the country above Auburn right now, but you're getting over a field goal with saying Alabama's the better team. It seems like they want Auburn action, which is the point I'm trying to make here, which makes Alabama the side.
I absolutely agree with you, and the difference in this game is going to come down to the Alabama defense. Alabama has held 4 of their last 5 opponents to 10 points or less. And let's not forget, if they didn't have that narrow loss at LSU a couple weeks ago, we would be talking about this game where Alabama would be a 1-loss team playing for the national, having a chance to get back in a national championship.
So when that's assessing how good Alabama is, that's a valid point, but it seems to fly in the face of one of your pet theories, which is a team after they lose the game that destroys their season goal is usually underperforms. Now, I thought about that while looking at this game. I think there's 2 things, that make that less the case here. One is it's been enough weeks where, okay, they've had their, oh my God, I can't believe it, and then eventually they're like, okay, I'm actually, we're going to play hard because, hey, how long can you be disappointed?
Right.
Not to mention, that's where I think the rivalry handicap comes in.
Absolutely. That's the big part. The rivalry here is they want nothing better than to ruin Auburn's season. This is their arch rival. This is the one game on the schedule every year. I mean, people in Alabama, families fight this week. They've gone to the 2 different schools. It's a heated rivalry. In the South, football is much huger in the South than it is other parts of the country. This is a game they want to have end Auburn's season. Don't let them play for the national championship.
I think there's another factor that is rivalry handicapping, which is the home team advantage, the home field advantage is often stronger. Usually from the fanaticism of the crowd, the whole town, the whole community is focused on the game, and the stats back it up. The home team has covered 5 of 6 in this series. Now, Auburn actually is a poor road team. Even with their national championship type season, they've only covered 3 of 12 on the road. You got a bad road team. You've got a probably slightly overrated Auburn team. You've got a motivated Alabama team that's got the coaching that is able to stop Newton. This was almost my best bet. So before you give your official projection, do you agree with me, generally in rivalry games, home field has a greater significance?
Absolutely, and I will say one note on that, on rivalry week. I think the Saturday games have more of a crowd than the Friday games, simply because a lot of the student body does go home for Thanksgiving.
But then then they're back. They're not back Friday, but they're back on Saturday?
You've got a day to come back to school.
That's interesting. That's a subtle point. Official projection.
I got one other point that I got to make. This is a big game. Alabama's played in more big games than Auburn, because of the national championship, because of the SEC championship games.
Good point.
It's all.
This has been an all-star Marco performance.
Well, thank you, sir.
Projection.
Alabama 35-27.
All right, I agree. Now it's your turn to continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and me. And next up, we're talking the last Friday game we're going to cover. We got Boise State at Nevada.